Okay. All right, we're live in 5, 4. Oh, look at that. 3. Okay, good. There we go. There we go. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's Mobility Tech and Connectivity Hour. This is our live weekly webcast on how we are connected and the way we get around. I'm Ryan Girardi. Today is Wednesday, April 15th. Thank you for joining us. Happy Hump Day and happy That Sucks Day. That Sucks Day. And I'm going to read about that in a few minutes, just a minute, because it's kind of funny when I was reading about that. But today on the show, we have, we're going to look at a Google mobility report that shows a decline in mobility statistics. Robots join the coronavirus fight. Will people say goodbye to Uber? And should we be required to wear face masks on public transit? But first, how shared mobility is transforming fixed ops. We are in a twisted scenario, as we all know, that we find ourselves in right now in this pandemic crisis. But today's market still demands strong relationships with your clients. From acquisition to retention, the growth of your business depends on keeping customers engaged with your company. And the more familiar you are with your clients, and the more you can answer their needs. According to one industry blog, research that was done by Bain and Company suggests that increasing customer retention rates by 5% increases profits by 25%. And another interesting fact to consider is that an existing customer is 50% more likely to try your new products compared to new customers. And one company that is focused on helping auto retailers with customer retention is QuickRide, which is an app for auto retailers that manages all interactions with shuttles, customers, and drivers. So Zoom here with us. I will put a link in the live chat that you can register, but it's in the YouTube description as well. So let's do this. Google has released a mobility data-centered report around the impact of COVID-19 social distancing that it's had on retail, grocery parks, and transit stations. Let me bring that up. I'm going to share my screen. Ding, 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 right here. So, and not surprising here. 47% decline in restaurants, retail, recreation. A 22% decline in grocery and pharmacy. And I've heard a lot of pundits speak to that grocery shopping will forever be changed because of this COVID-19, the whole stay in shelter, or mandates, if you will. So that's down 22%. Now this is peculiar. Parks down 19%. I actually would have thought it'd be higher because every park I've gone to, I'm about an hour outside of Chicago in Naperville, and every park I've gone to, they have them blocked off. You can't bring your car into the park. You can still access the park by foot, but you can't drive to a park and park in the park, blah, 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 to go there. So I would have expected that percentage to be higher. Now this was from late March. Yeah, March 29th is when this came out. So pretty interesting. And, I've been keeping an eye, I don't know if you keep an eye on the numbers here related to COVID. And I got to be cautious here because YouTube doesn't like broadcasters talking about COVID, but I did want to draw attention to these projections here. This projection site from healthdata.org had initially projected potentially upwards to 200,000 beds needed to treat people affected by COVID severely, right? And you can see, and I don't know if you've looked at these models, you can see that all these projections not only are not even close to what we're experiencing, but we're actually really flattening the curve. Look at deaths per day was expected to be as high as 7,000. We're hovering right around just around 2000. And we're at the peak right now. We are literally at peak right now. That was accounted for. Look at total deaths that were expected. So what this tells us is that the social distancing seems to be, it's working, right? However you want to look at it. I know people like to bring politics into it, but it's definitely working. So that leads to what's going to happen until there's a vaccine, until there's a cure. What is actually going to happen? That's the question. So you'll hear me refer to the idea of the COVID-19 economy, and you could say we're in the COVID-19 economy, but when I refer to it, I'm really referring to the long term. What's the long-term COVID-19 economy? So for instance, I'm going to play a video a little bit later from Brian Benstock suggesting that people will say goodbye to ride hailing, to Uber and Lyft, not completely to make it obsolete, but just suggesting that consumers won't get back to ride hailing to the levels that it was pre-COVID-19. So any sort of permanent, long-term, I guess you could say, result of this pandemic crisis, that would be referred to as the COVID-19 economy. So we're going to have Geoff and Fernando up in a few minutes. One fun news item I found here: robots joining the fight for coronavirus. Is excuse me, is that robots, obviously they're fast, they're efficient, but they're contagion proof. And reports show that hospitals are using robots to deliver food to patients in Singapore. Listen to patients' lungs. They're using them for. Obviously, that reduces risk to healthcare workers. In Hong Kong, there's a hotelier that's using robots to serve food to those that are in self-quarantine. And a Tokyo university has used avatar robots to hold a graduation ceremony. I thought that was pretty cool. For the mastermind discussion after the interview, Philadelphia Transit drops their face mask mandate after a viral video shows a rider being forcibly removed from a bus. In fact, I was going to play that. This is crazy. In case you didn't see that, here, watch this. And I'm not going to play the audio. I'm just going to play the video that's not the video there. Here it is right here. Got to find that button. So this went viral. You've got city officials and police forcibly removing this patron from the bus because he wasn't wearing a face mask. And that leads to, now they dropped the mandate. So apparently there was a mandate. He didn't listen and he wouldn't get off the bus. So, this is one of those scenarios where, what do you have, citizen unrest occurring? Give the guy a mask, right? I think that'd be one solution. Maybe there should be masks that you can give to people that refuse to. But this brings up a really good debate, and we're going to talk about that in today's discussion. Is should we be required to wear masks in public or on public transit? I got to say, speaking of masks, I find it hilarious. This might offend some people, but when I see people in their car with a mask on or a bandana as if they're going to give themselves the coronavirus, I found that funny. It makes me wonder it makes me realize where our minds are at. Everyone's in a different place with all this. And to see people wearing these masks in their car does kind of make me chuckle. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Fernando and Geoff, you guys are patiently waiting backstage. Why don't you go ahead and bring your cameras on. Now, Fernando Uribe is Director of Operations. He helps leaders at car dealerships cure their operational headaches with technology. And he started his career in the auto industry because of his passion for cars, helping to get new car shoppers through front doors of dealerships. And now he keeps customers coming back for life by elevating dealerships' processes with innovation and technology. And Geoff Infeld is a growth advisor with QuickRide, and he focuses on his experience as a client success leader with a demonstrated history of delivering entrepreneurial revenue and growth. So Geoff, And Fernando, welcome to the program. Great to have you here.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for having us.
And you saw some of the items I covered that we're going to get to in the mastermind discussion. The robots is a fun one. The mobility report, obviously, what that was based on is people's location data on their phones. We're able to see those declines. No surprise there. But we'll have some good discussions around wearing face masks in public, and will people say goodbye to Uber? So I look forward to having those conversations with you and everyone that's backstage. I'm going to go check the live feed, but Geoff, why don't you, if you could, we interviewed Fernando back in August, was it, at Digital Dealer? Was that August?
Yes, August, yeah.
And then we did a panel, Geoff and I, at the Uber for Business booth at NADA. And even just last week, we had Jim Bauman on and got to really talk about how Uber is and shared mobility is impacting auto retail. So we kind of reserved today for shared mobility and fixed ops. So give me an update, Geoff. Bring us up to speed. We'll get into the technology in a little bit, but what's going on in your world right now as it pertains to the stay in shelter and everything that's going on and how that's affecting you guys as a business?
Sure. I feel obligated in these forums always to kick this off with, and I'm sure I speak for everybody, our respect and admiration for our frontline workers who are in the healthcare industry, who are really these essential workers that really kind of take the brunt during these critical times. So hats off to all the workers out there that really fight for all of us and our safety. And in that same vein, we feel privileged to be able to support a dealer network that has long-standing history of being classified as essential workforce. Keeping these first responders and essential workers on the road with properly maintained vehicles. So, we're taking this very seriously. We've all been punched in the gut with our business models and our growth. As you know, we're a tech startup in this arena, and Fernando will share a little bit more about what QuickRide does and how we operate. But we're just excited to be at this point in time to help what we can do in this fight. And we do feel that this whole environment is a new normal. I think that's a theme that we've been hearing a lot of, especially on your show, Ryan. You've been pointing out kind of where that puck is going to be and what are the moves and positions that the industry needs to make to kind of capitalize on that when the economy opens up more and more. And we're seeing that today in our industry. So, we know transportation has fallen significantly. I saw a stat that 38% month over month was the drop in total miles driven. So that's going to impact dealers' service space. Meaning, there's less vehicles driven. On the other hand, there's the pent up demand for maintenance that's going to pop out of this other side. So there's a real fluid balancing act that's happening, and different states are impacting more so differently. I saw another stat, 2/3 reduction in miles driven alone in San Francisco and Detroit. So that's a whole sea change right there.
Yeah, a lot of trends have certainly gone down, and I want to reserve those for our mastermind discussion after our interview. Let's definitely focus on QuickRide here. I mentioned I refer to it, and this is based off the verbiage of the website, as a shuttle service app. But Fernando, you come from the retail side. You're very process driven, so. Give us that kind of elevator pitch of what Quick App is doing for auto retailers. Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So QuickRide is basically doing two things right now. One is we have our shuttle platform that we've always had. This is to allow dealers to basically turn their shuttles almost into like an Uber, right? So, customers can request a ride for an Uber straight from their phone. They don't need to download an app. They can track where the driver is at all times. And they can, the dealership can really easily manage the shuttle, versus having to do it like a pen and paper and people waiting in the lounge. It's a lot simpler. It's a lot quicker. That's what we've kind of been known for traditionally. We have this other product that we built for a client of ours to do a couple of use cases for them. So this was to do things like vehicle pickup and delivery for mobile mechanics to power, do logistics for a flatbed truck that they have. And what we've really been able to do is convert that software for dealerships to be able to really do with it whatever they want. They can do vehicle pickup and delivery with it. A lot of them are doing loaner swaps. And we're kind of just trying to get a way to get this product out there into dealerships' hands. We're actually giving it for free right now for the next 75 days, just to get this into dealerships' hands so they can start keep their business going. Otherwise, they're seeing their service drive business just dry up. We have reports from some of our clients that they're down 60 to 80% in some cases. And a lot of them have actually suspended using their shuttle in the time being, because obviously they don't want to put, 4 or 5, maybe 6 people in a tiny little van all together. So we want to make sure that we have an alternative for them, which are things like vehicle drop off and pickup. We've been really out there preaching for the last year that this is something that dealerships should have been doing, not just because it's safer for their clients, but because it's something their clients actually want. And I'll kind of give a personal example. My wife had a 2008 CRV for the longest time, and as you guys know, those cars had big Takata airbag recalls. That car sat in the garage. We both work from home. That car sat in the garage for months. We could have taken it to the dealership, but we just didn't have the time. The car we didn't feel was safe to drive necessarily. If a dealer had called us up and said, "Hey, we'll come pick up your car," to do that recall, or "Hey, we can actually come do that recall work in your garage," we would have taken them up in a second on that. So that really kind of opened my eyes to what QuickRide can do during all of this, and what dealerships can really do to bring their services to dealerships' homes. And that's what we're trying to do, is empower them to do that.
When did you guys come to market officially?
So we officially came to market almost 3 years ago at this point. This product that we were just talking about, we built it about a year ago for our dealership client. We've been testing it out with other dealerships over the last year. And then we really officially rolled it out a couple of weeks ago. Once this was kind of all getting ramped up, we officially released this out into the public and started really marketing it. So it's only been a couple of weeks, maybe about a month at this point. But we've been seeing the response has been amazing. Dealerships are very creative with what they want to do with this product, and we've seen them do all kinds of stuff with it, and we're just proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, it was actually Longo Toyota, Longo Lexus really wanted to jump in this game early on and tapped us to help them build it out in the marketplace, and then we've scaled that for many other dealers to use it.
So did you build it out of their need? Like, "Hey guys, we need something that does this," and you built it around that? Or you came to them with the idea and they kind of piloted it with you?
They actually came to us. Yeah. So they said, "Hey, we have these couple of use cases. We want to start, really bringing our services out to areas where we don't normally market." So I don't know how familiar everybody is with LA, but they're in kind of this eastern part of Los Angeles that is a nightmare to navigate around. But since they are who they are, they're able to get clients from all over the city. The problem is when you get clients from super far away, obviously it's really hard to get them in for service business, especially simple things like oil changes and regular maintenance. So what they actually wanted us for was to build this product to help service those customers. Is those customers that are just outside of that 10, 15 mile radius that they can really service. So they actually came to us with those use cases, and we built the product for them.
Go ahead. Oh, someone has the live stream on and it's looping back. Hit mute. There we go. So pre-COVID, so I mentioned, I kind of defined this COVID-19 economy, which we're at the incubation of, right? Like overnight, everything changed. So leading up to that, up to March, okay, we saw that happen in March. Has anything changed in the past month as far as how you I guess how you convey or present QuickRide to dealers? Has the value proposition been altered either temporarily or permanently in your minds?
Yeah, absolutely. The value proposition has become more urgent. Right now, dealerships are seeing that huge drop in business, and they're scrambling to save money. They're scrambling to save their employees' jobs. They're scrambling to save their business to get people still coming in. So it's been really easy to transition into, hey, this is not just something that you need because it's a great tool for your customers to have that kind of visibility, but really it's a way to like manage a process that you need to do in order to survive and to thrive. Overnight, we saw, just from polling our own existing client base, we saw about 30 to 40% of them already start to offer these kinds of services immediately. These are people that were not offering vehicle pickup and delivery, that weren't offering mobile mechanics before, or they were thinking about it. They had the mobile vans, they didn't know what to do with it. Overnight, they said, you know what, we have to do this. So we're just there to say, hey, we're going to help you facilitate that. And then over time, it's become, this greater thing where people saying, hey, why don't I use this for my sales team? Why don't I give access to my sales team so that they can create appointments for offsite sales in states that allow it? And they can go out and manage their own appointments throughout the day. And they develop an entire process around that.
Just remembered we were going to play your video. Why don't I prepare that real quick so we can do that. Let me click that fancy button. Okay, it's already
the
set.
magic button there.
There you go. Give me 1 second. We'll set up the video, turn that on, and we'll go full screen. Here we go.
QuickRide is a jobs management platform with 3 parts: Command Center, Specialist app, and Customer app that work together to get your specialists where they need to go as efficiently and transparently as possible. It all starts in the Command Center. You schedule jobs for your customers here and assign them to the specialists who will perform the work. Quickly track all the days, weeks, and months jobs on the calendar. Your specialists use the Specialist app on their mobile phones to receive and manage their jobs. Specialists see their assigned jobs for the day, the details they need to complete the jobs, and get directions to each job's location. Efficient organization of jobs for your specialists. At the same time, your customers can use the Customer app to monitor their job. They see when the specialist is on their way to them and receive real-time updates as the work is being performed. Useful information for your customers. As your specialists complete the jobs, you see the vehicle's movement on the map and get job status updates in the Command Center. Powerful visibility of your job's progress and specialist location. QuickRide, jobs management made easy.
So I'm curious, you refer to it as jobs management.
Yes.
Meaning like the ROs?
Yeah, so basically we try to keep the name as generic as possible since dealerships are using it for all kinds of tasks. So that was just the name that we came up with Longo Lexus.
I'm going to go put a link to QuickRide video in the live chat here.
Yeah, jobs was kind of a catch-all phrase because, like Fernando was saying, dealers said, we've got some initiatives to get out there and expand our service radius with service trucks that will go out and do oil changes and tire rotations and things like that mobily. So there's that, and then there's parts delivery vehicles that are doing hot shots all over town, and then you've got again, this valet service, which is very much a necessity in this environment to get out there and pick up a car and drop it off. And you hear buzzwords like contactless or touchless will be the new phrases that you'll be hearing about dealers' service offerings. And that's really kind of sanitizing the vehicle, ensuring the safety of the driver or the porter that's picking up the vehicle, making sure those keys are been sanitized before they get back to the customer. All of these great things that dealers are really well set up for that caring and wearing aspects of taking care of customers' vehicles. So you're going to see like probably a lot of that energy that you see at dealerships going into their major operations will be now, turned and pushed into these areas of high customer experience and high customer service, which is great because, like Fernando was saying, this is something that was building in the works, where consumers wanted better convenience and they wanted a better customer experience. It's almost like Starbucks. Did they really need drive-throughs to still be the number one coffee retailer in the world? They really didn't. We always went to Starbucks, but they knew what customers really want, and so they added the drive-throughs. So it's now where dealers are almost being forced to evolve in this experience for what the customer demand is.
And long term, Ryan, you were kind of talking about the post-COVID economy earlier. We've already had lots of our clients who've started using this to say, hey, you know what? I don't know why I wasn't doing this before. I don't know why this is what it took for me to get there. And I'm absolutely going to continue to do these kinds of services after this is done. They realized just how simple it is. They weren't, once they got over their concerns about insurance and liability and all these things, and they got it up and running, they realized this is just something that's a net benefit for everybody involved. And it's just a no-brainer to keep doing it even after all of this.
Yeah, it's a logistics thing.
It is, and if I want to draw some clarity on things, I'm a little distracted, so I might have, if you've already clarified this, my apologies. You're providing the app that makes the cohesive experience, that consumer experience that lets the dealer manage what they need to. You're not providing the shuttle, the hardware per se. You're not providing that, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
so they're
just the software.
They're providing their own shuttle services, and then the drivers, it's their own drivers, right?
Yep, their own employees as well. Yeah.
Okay, and so the real benefit there is the dealer retains control over that brand experience. That's what they're retaining control over. They're not outsourcing anything to a third party. Now,
Yes.
The consumer, do they have to install an app?
No, they don't have to install anything. So they just get a text message that has a link in it that opens up the last browser that they use. And they basically get that same Uber experience where they can track the driver, see where they are, how long it's going to take to get to them, contact the driver from there if they need to. And for our shuttle experience, when they're ready to go back home, they can actually schedule their own ride straight from that link as well. So they don't even need to interact with the dealership for that second part if they don't want to.
Okay, good. So you've really removed that friction for the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the example you gave, where you had a minivan in the house that you weren't driving, but it needed service, right?
Yeah.
Tell me again, because you're not picking up vehicles, you're picking up and shuttling passengers, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I'll give you kind of an example of how, some dealerships are doing it right now. So we have a dealership out in Utah that they're doing something really amazing, where they're doing something called a mobile advisor, where they're putting a service advisor in the shuttle, and they're basically turning the advisor into a shuttle driver. And who's he shuttling around are porters, and they're going from house to house, picking up cars, and a porter will exit the vehicle. The service advisor has an iPad app that comes native with their DMS, where he can do the intake, take pictures of the vehicle, and then the porter just simply hops in the car and brings it back to the dealership. And then the van with the remaining porters goes on to the next guy. So there's all kinds of stuff that people are doing with their own employees to manage these processes.
Yeah. And the economics work out very, very well. We all know a gentleman in the industry, Brian Benstock. He's a well-known thought leader. He's one of the principals over at Paragon Honda in New York. They're doing 3,000 pickup and drop-off deliveries for service valet a month now. They started with 1,000, keeps doubling. And they were doing it way before this post-COVID world kicked in. And you can go online, you could see his videos and his stats, and he really famously touts that, from a customer pay RO, the revenue is double the revenue that he's been getting per customer, and for warranty ROs, it's a third higher for the work. And that goes back to the philosophy which everyone adheres to today, which is you really don't want customers waiting in the lounge for their vehicle to be produced and finished from maintenance. It's really about getting that customer in a loaner or a shuttle or getting them in an Uber off dealership lot, and then so they can do all the work. And then if they need to contact the customer and say, you need this additional work, the customer's more likely to say, yeah, let's go ahead and get that done since I'm safely back at my home or office.
Very cool. And just to clarify, you said Paragon has been doing 3,000 rides per month?
3,000 vehicles are being picked up and dropped off. It's probably more like 2,000 vehicles a month are being picked up and dropped off for their Honda and Acura store.
Okay, about 2,000
for this service. Yeah, it's really 3,000 rides back and forth on these vehicles for picking up and dropping them off.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, great. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I know we've got a good rapport and we've been talking about these things, but it's good to get kind of formally get you up here and present that out to our viewers and to our listeners. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So stay still. I'm gonna flip over to the mastermind discussion. For those that I'm gonna bump you up to panelists to continue the conversation. I'm gonna bump you up to panelists. I'm gonna do some closing housekeeping items, address the audience a little bit. So just hang tight while I bump you, and I'll be right with you. So got John and John. There we go, and Paul. All right, there we go. And right here. Okay, so folks, that was Fernando Uribe and Geoff Infeld from QuickRide, the shuttle service app. And what we're about to do is go into what we call our mastermind discussion. So every Wednesday at 2:00 Central, we do the Mobility Tech and Connectivity Hour. I've been calling it the show, but it's really more of an hour dedicated to the shared mobility and transportation space. And so we do a featured guest interview like that to kick things off. I read some news items in the beginning, and those will make up our mastermind discussion. If you'd like to participate, you can. You can do it right now. I'll put a link in the live chat, and all you have to do is get yourself registered with the Mobility Tech program that we have on our website, and you'll automatically be sent your exclusive link to access the Zoom. And the benefit of doing that is you can throw questions into the panel while we're talking. There's a Q&A. You can also raise your hand. We can turn on your microphone and you can ask questions. You can be part of the conversation. And that's the whole idea here, is we want this to be a place that you can come to on a frequent basis. Even though I'm doing it every week, not expecting you to be here every week, but definitely would like to see you here on a regular basis, have a chance to chime in, report on things going on in your world as it pertains to, how we're connected and how we get around. But you can stay on the live stream right now if you are, and feel free to use the live chat there as well. Let me get the link here for folks, in case I didn't already. Yeah, let me put this link. If you sign up here to join the panel. Boy, sometimes I just can't type very well. Okay, let's get things started. Everybody's on mute, so you might want to unmute yourselves. Paul, I see you've got your mask on. Now, I don't know if you're doing that to mock me or if you really are afraid of giving yourself coronavirus.
No, I'm doing it because our governor, Larry Hogan, just while we were on the air, announced that we have to wear those when we go out, which is ridiculous in my opinion, but it's especially in stores, et cetera. So I've already put a call out several hours ago to my state senators and delegates saying, hey, how about we get the local health departments to report on their contact tracing and find out, has there actually been any community spread in stores? And do these things actually work? Was there a reason why for the first month they told us not to wear them? Was that just because they didn't have enough for the healthcare workers and our health didn't matter? Not to be too controversial, but I thought I'd kick it off with a little bit of fun and controversy.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, look, I'm not going to be shy about where I stand with all this. I'm not opposed to the measures to protect our health. I'm not opposed to that. But at the expense that it's cost us. I mean, shutting dealers down from selling cars, right? The cost to public transit. I do have, some pushback on. And like I said on the show, when I see people in their car wearing a mask, it makes me wonder what
I know.
they're like. Are they freaking out? Are they that freaked out of what's going on? Are they misinformed, or am I missing something? That's what makes me wonder. So for those up here, and JW, I just bumped you up to panelist because I saw you're up here. So if you want to, pop your video on, you're certainly welcome to. And you're on mute though. And I want to ask you about your show.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
Jay just finished his daily State of the Union. So I'll definitely want you to bring us up to speed. But Paul, for your sake, because I know you're short on time and you have to go the soonest. You're in the public transit side. Can you give us an update on things in your world? I know that this COVID thing has flipped your world upside down because you had a whole world tour coming. But why don't you give us an update from your world of things?
Yeah. So my new book, The Future of Public Transportation, hit #1 in March, and I had a worldwide book tour scheduled to support it. And it all, of course, went on hold. And like you, I completely understand and don't want to exacerbate the spread of COVID-19 in any way. But it really has given a gut punch to the public transportation industry. Ridership on public transit across the world has experienced a 50 to 97% reduction in ridership. I did my own CEO roundtable live webinar yesterday with 6 transit CEOs from across North America. And Kevin Quinn, who took my place as CEO of the MTA in Baltimore, told me that ridership on some of the commuter bus and commuter train services are down 97%. People are just not riding into their office anymore. Just last night I was texting back and forth with the CEO of Vancouver's transit system, TransLink, Kevin there, and Kevin Desmond, and his system won Transit System of the Year this year from APTA, our national association, is the best major public transit system. And they're on the verge of, I don't want to say going bankrupt, but something like that, whatever public agencies do, or they have to cut back dramatically because their federal government hasn't given them any funding to assist them. Here in the U.S., as part of that $2 trillion package that was passed a couple weeks ago, part of that included $25 billion for the public transit industry. And so $23 billion of that went out to urban area transit systems, and $2 billion went to rural systems. And they are through the normal formula funding mechanisms that they get their money from the Federal Transit Administration. So that was a lifeline thrown our way from Washington, D.C. It was 280% of the FY 2020 fiscal year allocations. And so I've been talking to transit system CEOs across America, and some, like Phil Washington, head of LA Metro, who I just talked with last night for half an hour, said that's only going to last him through October because his system is funded through sales tax. And of course, sales tax is way down across every city in America. Whereas other transit systems, it's going to last them 2 years because they're not sales tax funded. The only increased cost they have is the increase of cleaning the vehicles, and they have a decrease in cost because they've cut their routes. And so their overtime hours are down, but they also have a decrease in fare box revenue because most of them have had to allow people to board from the back of the bus so they don't have interaction with the driver, which means they can't put cash in the fare box. So they've stopped enforcing fares. 9/10 of all the transit systems in North America have done this. And so they're not collecting fares right now. And so there's a big gap. Most people get about a quarter of their funding through that. And so transit systems are just now starting to think about game plans of getting out of this. I was talking yesterday to a colleague of mine overseas who's been following the Wuhan, China transit system ridership numbers. They're about 3 to 4 weeks ahead of us in kind of getting out of this pandemic. And they are back up to 80% ridership on their public transit services. Now, there are different, demographic usage of their vehicles. More of them may need to ride transit. Here in America, a lot of riders are what we call choice riders. People that ride commuter bus and commuter train are white collar folks that might make six figures who are taking a train to get into downtown, whatever your city is, but might be willing to continue to work from home a few days a week, or drive their car. And so I think we're going to see a slower recovery on that ridership. But pretty much everybody I've talked to thinks that once we get through the pandemic in the next, let's say 2 to 6 weeks, depending on who you're talking to, and kind of start opening back up society and businesses, we're going to see a lot of folks who rely on transit, who have no other choice, getting back on the bus. But transit systems have to do their part to make sure that they're changing the messaging, right? So for the last 3 weeks, we've heard politicians say, and I'm a recovering politician as a former county commissioner, get off the bus. It's a petri dish for germs. In my opinion, it's not the right message. I think that what we saw on that bus ride from SEPTA was not a good look, of yanking people off of buses who don't have masks on. Come on, man. Like you said, and my wife said the same thing to me when she saw it for the first time. Why not just give the guy a mask? Instead of, pull them off the bus like that. I mean, that's not the messaging. We're trying to encourage people to ride. You and I have talked about this before. I know I'll be quiet in just a minute, but the ridership numbers across North America have been on a 5-year decline on buses and subways and all that stuff, right? Just in the last 3 quarters of 2019, we saw for the first time in 5 years an increase in ridership. We were all excited about it. And it was being led by commuter services of all things. People were figuring out, hey, man, instead of driving in, fighting all that traffic, adding to the congestion and all the smog in the air and all that stuff. Sorry, guys. I'll get on the train and on the bus. And it's all over. Gut punch. Boom.
Yeah.
It's all over. And so now we're at, like I said, 50, 60, 70% reduction in ridership. And it's going to be a while till we get folks what they call back on the bus.
And that gut punch applies to everybody. I mean, Jay and John, JR here from the car shipping side, major dent. Geoff and Fernando, even myself, on the auto retail side, major blow. It definitely applies to everybody. Real quick, you kind of already answered it. You don't think that passengers should be required to wear a face mask right now on a bus or a train?
So that's a good question. I actually think it is a good thing. I don't think it should be. I don't think people should be yanked off the buses if they don't have them on it. But in order to remember that we're dealing with what I consider mass hysteria over this, and that there's been a really strong, I don't want to say overreaction, but there's been a very strong reaction in the public to this, since there's no, antidote and no, they're just working on they're working on the vaccinations for it, et cetera. And so anything that can produce a sense of calm and that people can ride, I'm in favor of. And so this would mean, I think, that transit systems should continue the high level of cleaning they're doing for high touch surfaces. So that is the grab bars, the railings. It's not a bad idea to continue social distancing on vehicles. A lot of transit systems now have gone to only one person per row and maybe reducing the capacity of a bus by 50%. I don't think that's wrong from a messaging standpoint. Whether it's clinically necessary or not, I'll leave that to the doctors, who I think are still trying to figure this out. But when it comes to making sure that you feel safe on the bus, I think it's not a bad idea to have people wear the mask. And if it is helping to reduce the spread of the contagion, all the better. But at least in the sense of producing a sense of, hey, I can ride public transit safely. It's not a petri dish. I can see on the headboard of the bus, which is one thing I'm suggesting to transit systems, put up there the last time the bus was clean, right on the front of the bus. Instead of the destination only, put on there, just like in the back of a bathroom door.
Right, you see it in the restrooms.
This place was cleaned at 2 p.m. today. Because they're cleaning the buses like every 2 hours now. A lot of transit systems are. Why not advertise that? Why not let people know that? Why not tell people, yeah, you should keep this on for a while. And you know what? We're not going to have cash fares for a while. Just let's go to the e-faring. Let's go to the tap and go with your credit cards. Let's do away with all the handling of materials and cash. A low touch solution and a high kind of sanitary solution is probably the best way to help get people back on the bus.
Here's my argument for that. You're required to wear clothes, right? You can't go into places, with the shirt off or, naked. You're just not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to smoke, right? Because that's a health hazard. So in that sense, I can see the argument for it. By the same token, now that we're looking at the data, yes, COVID is highly contagious and it's undetectable for so long, which makes it so highly contagious. but the fact is, once we have, a vaccine for it, it's probably not going to be such an issue. I would say if you feel like you're at risk and you know, should not get COVID, then you should probably avoid high risk areas. And you could push me back on this. To me, a bus, a train is a high risk area because it's just such an uncontrolled environment. It just seems like you should avoid that. Now that leads to, what if you're high risk and that's your only way to get around? You're not restricted or prohibited from going, but it is a high risk for you. I want to throw in there, and I know, Paul, you're gonna bump in a minute. So thanks for coming up here and and sharing that with us.
Let me just say that all the views expressed here were mine personally, and
Not
no employers or
representative.
groups I'm associated with. Yeah, and one other little tidbit on that before I go is that paratransit, or kind of the individualized rides that traditionally have been for people with disabilities and the elderly, a lot of transit systems now, those ridership are down dramatically too. And so they're using those vehicles for high risk folks who maybe were not eligible to utilize the ADA paratransit in the past. They're also using it for Meals on Wheels, some great humanitarian uses of the vehicles and the services. And some of the private companies like National Express and First Transit and Transdev MV, those companies are allowing their drivers to take Meals on Wheels, to take samples, the testing samples to the hospitals. In Jacksonville, Florida, they've even gone to using autonomous buses, the shuttles. My buddy Nat Ford, the CEO there, from going from a drive-through testing location to take it to the Mayo Clinic where they can be tested. So there's lots of innovative solutions. I don't think we're going to come out of this looking the same in public transit. I don't think Uber and Lyft are going to go away. I think, on the contrary, to what your guy said earlier, I think that you're going to see more integration of these for-profit. Of course, they're not for-profit; they haven't made any money yet. But in theory, for-profit companies in working more hand in glove with public transit agencies, where public transit agencies might say, you know what, overnight, when we've only got 500 people on average riding, we're just going to outsource that to Uber and Lyft or other companies that do that kind of work instead of running buses all night. I think you're going to see all kinds of creative solutions, technology-driven solutions coming to the forefront when it comes to mass transit.
John P., I'm curious on your thoughts. I played the video from Brian Benstock, and he put out the argument that people are going to say goodbye to ride sharing. They're going to say goodbye to public transit. Paul, I think, as you just said, it's going to come. It's not going to go away permanently, and I don't think that's Brian's message at all. But John, what is your opinion? Is Uber and Lyft, are these services going to never see what they saw before?
Well, I think people use ride sharing for different things, right? But what Brian was identifying was, hey, I've replaced a vehicle with ride sharing with Uber and Lyft, and that was never too prominent to start with. It did happen, but if you chart the last 10 years in major cities where there's been the most growth for ride sharing, it actually, private vehicle ownership went up, not down, right? So, and there's reasons for that. People are buying cars to drive for ride sharing. So that piece of it may be. In the transit piece, what struck me is, no, if ride sharing replaced taxis to a great degree and somewhat car rental. And so, I'm not that far away from New York City. When I go in on a train, and then I take the last mile, usually in a rideshare, in an Uber or Lyft, or a taxi, or a bus. I don't have any alternatives there. So, whatever transit I use is going to have that same risk. So I'm not as extreme as Brian. Yeah, will things change? They've already changed, right? There's not a lot of ride sharing going on relative to a month or so ago. Will they come back? I think by necessity they have to, right? Because any choice that you take last mile in a lot of places, outside of renting a vehicle, and even that, is somewhat of a risk. There just aren't that many options. So I don't take that extreme per se. But there will definitely be changes. Right now everyone's nervous. By the way, on the mask thing, I just want to comment. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal last week that said, unless you're wearing a full-blown medical authorized hospital mask, right, the effect is 10%, right? Wow. Not 90%, 10%, wow. Right? So what the article said was, look, 10% is better than nothing, but it's not worth getting crazy about, right? So anyway, I thought I'd add that.
Well, no, I've thought about that too. Look, airborne or not. I mean, I've seen people literally walking outside in a park or on a sidewalk
Yes.
wearing masks. And I'm thinking, like you just don't get it. And it's a bizarre, and I see it a lot. But I'm not surprised. Yeah. I don't feel like a face mask is going to do me a whole lot of good unless I'm on a bus. If I'm on a bus, that might help me out, right? Because there's a lot of airborne, breathing going on. So, hey, Geoff came back. Jay, I wasn't able to really hit your show last night, but I think you heard the good news. Michigan is now permitting car sales, and I know you've been really trying to keep a pulse on that. Pennsylvania, I think, as far as we all know, is the last state standing to hold out on that, which hurts my heart because I'm a Philly guy, and I've always said I'm a big fan of Pennsylvania, so I'm really disappointed in Pennsylvania. And ironically, I'm a Michigan guy too. I've got roots there and family there. But how's give us an update on life from your side.
Okay, so my microphone's on. So I think the number one takeaway right now is that there are too many cars stacked up in too many places where that wasn't the case before. So with the shelter in place, the lockdown, now supply has far exceeded demand, and that's going to be a real big problem. And to get everything restarted with the OEMs, and I agree. I don't think I say this very often, but I think we do. We need to watch what China does. We followed their timeline on the way in, and we might be following their timeline on the way out. So we need to pay attention to that. But at least 30 days, and anything new that's going to happen will be in May. And so just gotta hang on. That's where we're at right now. That's what I think.
That's good input. And the fact of the matter is, it's not just car sales, it's also ride hailing, right? There's fewer people doing ride hailing, so there's basically drivers who have an asset or a liability at this point that they can't monetize as much. There's that. There's rentals. You saw the video I shared. If the rentals aren't on the road, they got to go somewhere, and they can't sit in the little lot. I posted a video, you guys, on my Twitter that I shared with Jay.
I saw that. Wow.
There's a church up the road from here, and I'm right on Naperville and Aurora, which is a pretty big area. This is a big Calvary church, and I estimated there were about 1,000 vehicles parked in their parking lot. Literally, I counted, there was about 1,000 vehicles, and they were all packed in, took up about a third of the parking lot real estate that was available at the church. But that's not the only place that those cars are stashed. That's got to be all over the country.
I was just going to say, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That church parking lot is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And my guess is it's gotten to the point where people probably, if they could hide the cars, they would. Yeah. You don't want, and you know what, Ty, your video reminded me of a video Ty did. Ty was driving by Kansas City Airport just with the camera out the window, and just plane after plane after plane after plane just sitting there. It's an ominous sight. It makes you very concerned about, okay, so it wasn't easy to stop it all, but it's going to be even harder to get it all started again.
That's where a conversation like this will get very speculative, right? Because we don't know. We just don't know what this recovery looks like. And that's why I was saying earlier, and you weren't on at the beginning, I was defining or explaining the term COVID-19 economy. We are at the incubation period of what will be known as the COVID-19 economy. But how long that economy sticks around for and what it looks like over time. I mean, the Great Depression, I think, was 11 years, if I recall. Not if I recall, but from what I know, I think it was about 11 years. To get your mind wrapped around.
We're not going to have 11 years.
We're not going to have 11 years, but what we don't know is, as things tick back to where they were, how long does that look like, and what does the economy look like as certain things tick back? And I think ride hailing, Uber and Lyft, to Brian Benstock's point, it could be a long recovery for them. Rentals probably not so much, and car sales probably not so much, but ride sharing, I would say it is. Geoff, Fernando, you got an opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think ride sharing in the traditional sense of the auto industry, I think might change a little bit. The question is, what's the alternative, right? If a dealership's going to move away from Uber or Lyft, is the alternative to go back into a shuttle where there's 5 people in a van as well? I don't know. Maybe they start saying, hey, maybe we only put 2 or 3 people in a shuttle, or maybe even just 2, or maybe we, figure some other alternative. But if we're talking about getting rid of Uber and Lyft in the auto industry, there's always going to be the question, okay, well, what are you going to do to replace it? So we think that there is still going to be room for all of those alternatives, but I think dealerships will always get creative with what they can do to get customers out of their dealership, at least in our world.
It's not really economically viable for a dealer's service department to have a private shuttle for every individual customer that needs to be shuttled around. That's not economically viable, right?
Correct. In the same sense that it's not economically viable to put every single customer in an Uber either, right? So there is a balance point where the 60% of people who need a ride out of the dealership because they can't get picked up by a spouse, or they can't walk back home or to work, those people will always need something. Some dealerships have gone with loaners. That's an incredibly expensive investment. Going strictly to just Uber or Lyft is also incredibly expensive. If you're doing a $15 ride, which will likely get more expensive after all this is done, for 100 customers a day, that's going to add up. But having personnel, and owning a shuttle is going to get expensive as well. So there's going to be a fine balance that dealerships are going to have to figure out during all of this. But it's going to be a combination. That's where we really think that going to the customer is going to be the answer. A lot of these customers that are just there for a quick oil change and then need a shuttle, and by the time they get to where they need to go, need to come back anyway. Why is that customer even, coming to the dealership? It's not a revenue generating proposition for the dealership. Might as well just have them, go pick up the car or go do it in their driveway. That's the kind of stuff that I think dealerships are really going to need to ramp up.
An oil change takes an hour.
Right.
For the past 3 years, when I take my vehicle in for service, it takes an hour. I remember it used to take like 20 minutes.
Right.
Now they take like an hour. And you had said 60% of service customers on average need transportation, meaning they can't stay there at the dealership and wait. They need to go somewhere.
Yeah, that's a JD Power number.
Okay. Now, what you're suggesting is the dealer should go to the vehicle and perform routine maintenance there on site where the vehicle is?
It's entirely possible, right? Especially if you have one person going around and that's all that they do, and they have a van that's especially equipped for that. It really makes perfect sense, right? And it's really to free up the service bays for stuff that's actually going to generate profit for these dealerships. An oil change isn't necessarily going to generate profit. And like you said, you wait an hour anyway. If you're sitting there waiting in the lounge and someone comes up to you and says, hey, we also noticed that in 5,000 miles, you're going to need new tires. Do you want that? They're going to say no, right? Because that's already done. But if that van is outfitted with a couple of different things, they can, potentially do more at that customer's house, or when the customer's still at their own home because you brought their car back to the dealership. It's going to open up a lot of avenues for dealerships that they didn't have before.
To your point, Fernando, that's something that's been going on in the heavy equipment industry and in all other industries for a long time. My lawn and garden guy just brought my mower deck out to me and swapped it out for my snowblower on my riding tractor today.
Right.
It cost me an extra $40 to have them do the work here, as opposed to me dropping it off there. The convenience was huge. It's snowing out today in Michigan, so I don't know what good the mower deck's going to do, but probably should have left the snowblower on there at this point. It's been snowing all day.
Right.
I think people are just going to become accustomed to that. It's a I've been on a couple of things in the last couple of weeks as this virtual reality starts to, really hit solid, and people are going to expect a lot more of those kind of services. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's just from a customer standpoint, it's incredibly more convenient. And especially the smarter dealerships are going to get really good at being proactive about it. They're going to get a list of all their customers that have a recall workout. And if they're smart, they're going to send, I get those mailers all the time that say, hey, come on in, fix your airbag. If I'd gotten one that said, hey, we'll come to you and fix that airbag, I would have jumped on that immediately. So the smart dealerships are going to do that.
And you call, JR, you mentioned virtual reality world. It's so funny. You think back to sometimes how you find your plumber. There's a truck next door at your neighbor's house and it says JR Plumbing, and it looks like a nice truck, and the guy comes out and he's clean, and I write his number down. If I start to see, dealership mobile service trucks around my neighborhood, there's a viral effect that's going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you set them up like a pizza delivery, right? So you also cross sell. So the 5 other people that own cars in that neighborhood, you're proactively reaching out to them and seeing if they need service today too.
Exactly.
So now you've got a technician landing in that area. In the rural areas of America, farmers have been doing this for 50 years. That service, the John Deere service guy goes to, Taylor County in Iowa, and he spends 2 days up there and fixes everybody's equipment, and then he comes back home. It's the future.
And it's incredibly more efficient. And to Geoff's point, manufacturers are already, I don't know if you guys watch a lot of TV. I mean, there's nothing else to do right now, right? But there's a lot of ads.
This is my life right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Me and Jay, this is our life.
I saw ads from Lexus, from Ford, from tons of brands saying, we're going to start doing all of these things. We're encouraging our dealers to, go to you instead of you coming to them, and to do everything contactless. I literally saw one last night from Lexus. But they're not giving dealerships the tools to do this. Some are and some aren't. Ford was getting ready to do stuff like this. We went to the LA Auto Show in November, and they had a huge exhibit on the pre-made mobile mechanic trucks that they had, and they sold out in minutes. I think they sold 8,000 in like a couple minutes, and they're still backed up, right? They still have those, but we just have a couple of clients of ours that just got those trucks in, and for them it was perfect timing. And we think that a lot of manufacturers are going to start going that way of building these kinds of services for their dealerships to opt into.
See, and if there's any silver lining in any of this, right, it's the whole innovation thing. I mean, these are good policies anyway, and we were evolving towards it. But if somebody has a filled up shop and somebody's selling a whole bunch of vehicles, right, the motivation to innovate simply isn't there. In this climate, right, when nothing's filled and I have to go the extra mile, all of a sudden now these practices will be adopted in my thinking much, much quicker, right? The market will evolve much quicker, right? And, it probably would have happened that way if all of this other stuff was falling in line. But right now it's a necessity, but it's good customer policy anyway. So when things flip back around, whenever they do, these things will be ingrained at that point, right? The market will have evolved. The customer, convenience will have evolved. Some guys probably, won't evolve, but they'll be distinguished by the fact that they don't do this. But all of a sudden, this market changes for the better for the consumer, right?
Yeah.
So, in the spirit of a true mastermind, we, I feel like, and Jay, I kind of want to kind of maybe back this up a little bit. Jay runs, by the way, he does Auto Transport Intel. It's a live weekly webcast every Tuesday. JR, I know you're familiar with it. John P., you've been on the program. You're on a quest to get answers. I've been watching like you and Ty. I love Ty. He's awesome, man. I love that he's willing to say things too. He's actually willing to say things like,
I know, it's cool.
I went and shook hands just to see if you'd shake back, like he's just funny like that.
Yeah, I know. Right.
I'm struggling to stay, I don't want to say out of the political aspect, but I am frustrated personally, and I'm sure this is shared by everybody here, there's a frustration level of of privacy, of restriction, things you're like. My parents are in Michigan and I couldn't go spend Easter with my family. That was frustrating. And I feel like the threat of COVID as a disease is actually relatively minimal, and it shouldn't prohibit me from going to spend Easter with my family like I do every year. That bothers me. And I don't think that the American, the mass population, I don't think is going to stand by for a whole lot longer under these conditions. I just don't see it happening.
That's what Ty says. That's exactly what Ty says. And I'll tell you, I think that what bothers me is, the Septibus video. That's terrible. Churches in Mississippi, police cars filling their parking lots. That makes no sense. And Utah now has already got a new declaration. If you enter Utah, you got to fill out all this information. I don't know. I hope that goes away. So it's hard to, like John P., you're right. Innovation is happening. Let's focus on the innovation side instead of the death and regulation side.
The draconian aspect.
Yeah. And we're all left to make all those decisions on our own, unless these executive orders, if there's anything concerning right now, it's some of these executive orders. I think it's good to shelter in place. I caution on the side of, we don't know. And everybody in Italy that, is vocal, like, I didn't take it very seriously, and now I got this thing, take it seriously. So I'm listening to that. But freedom is important. And I like what you said about Easter. I think you should have been able to go. If that's what you want to do, you're not like running around the mall, licking the walls. That's different. That's not what you're doing.
Technically, I own a second home in northern Michigan.
Right,
I'm not allowed to go there right now.
I think that's ridiculous.
You guys, Mike Huckabee. Here's. I got two scenarios that are ridiculous, and this is why I feel like there has to be something that we as citizens can do. Mike Huckabee. Sure, everybody knows Mike Huckabee. He was governor of Arkansas or Alabama or whatever.
I think it's Arkansas.
He's got a property on the panhandle of Florida, and the beach is his property. Like, it's his legal owned property is the beachfront. But Florida has now put a mandate that you can't be on beaches. So he's now suing, I think, the county, if not the state.
Oh, there's going to be so many lawsuits.
Suing the county because he's being prohibited from being on his own beach. That is over the top.
That is
over the top. And there has to be something, because here we can say, look for the silver lining, innovate your way through this, but it could all be in vain. Because the minute you innovate this way and solve, come up with some sort of avenue of possibility, that could be taken from you. You just don't know. Look at dealers that can't sell cars.
Well, look at the dealers. To the point, look at dealers in Pennsylvania on the Pennsylvania-Jersey border. What they're essentially saying is, what you're doing is driving my traffic in Pennsylvania over to a Jersey dealer, because a Jersey dealer can do remote sales, but a Pennsylvania dealer can't. And so the insanity of the situation is, what are you preventing? Because the remote sale is happening anyway. You're just penalizing the dealers in the state from actually doing it.
In fact,
the only holdout in the entire country is Pennsylvania. And it makes no logical sense. You're really not preventing anything, right?
You're not preventing anything. You're definitely not stopping the spread of the disease that way. And Jay, I don't know if you know this, but do you know what Carvana is able to do that a traditional dealer struggles with?
Actually, I'd love to know.
They can sell you a car and tag it in a state that's permitting it. So no, I think Nevada went back to saying no car sales, although now it's like by appointment only. But Carvana can ship you a car with tags from a different state. So
what's happening? Well, go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
No, please, you.
So I just spoke with Kim, our friend Kim from 50 State DMV this morning. I spent about an hour on the phone with Kim. What's happening is, even though car sales are allowed there, the Secretary of State's offices are closed.
And they don't have an electronic
That's
process.
right. That's
right. They can't process the paperwork. So yes, people are going outside there's two things happening. One is there's actually Secretary of State's offices that are not advertised to be open, but if you know somebody, you can get your stuff processed. Number one, that's going on. Little mafia looking type situation there, right? And then number two is those that are closed, they are actually going to other states because they cannot process it within that state. So Michigan's a perfect example. She turned back on her online sales. Well, that didn't do any good because she left the Secretary of State's office closed. So fortunately in Michigan, we have a kind of cool rule that was pre this particular governor, that is dealerships have been empowered by the state to issue plates. So we have a kind of cool rule here, but I don't know how many other states have that.
So I know what you say, Ryan, about staying out of the politics, because I keep Tuesday Nights Live out of the politics. But I've let the state of car hauling enter it because I created my own executive order to allow political discussion, because it's such a big part of what's affecting all of us. And what is essential business? I mean, it's actually a really good question. It's almost like a philosophical question. What is essential business?
And who decides that? That's the thing, is
right. And here's the thing is, even if it is deemed essential or not, should you be doing it? So isn't some personal choice? But then, by the way, I think that's where the medical community says, well, listen, our hospitals are not overrun in these areas where you've made all these rules. So relax the rules, get back on board with reality.
Here's another frustrating scenario. A physician at a hospital, I think in Florida, I have to look it up. Her husband sued and won to get full custody of their child, because on the basis that because of her profession, she's putting their daughter at risk, and she lost custody.
Wow.
Now, again, are you supposed to quit your job because you're high risk, because you'd rather, so you don't lose your child? Like,
that's what he would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job, man. Thanks. Yeah. Really, really working together. And that's another thing that I say. That's why I like slogans like "We're in this together." I love the slogan. Just as long as are we really living the slogan? Can we all live the slogan? If we're going to say it, you got to live it. That should be essential business. Okay. See, that's why I stay out of politics.
Yeah, it's a tough call. And so again, it just comes back to, again, in the spirit of a mastermind, we want to come here to exchange information, right? And be in it together, because we are in this together. Everybody on this panel right here and everybody watching is connected, economically, if you will, through our industries, right? We're all connected. We're all affected by this. So we have to persevere. But I think this kind of deep rooted, is it in vain? Because what's going to change? What else is going to change? That's the level of frustration. I don't even know what to do about it. And you even said in your show, you have to be careful what you say while you're streaming on YouTube, because
right.
That
the
could
filter, the big filter. Yeah. I think that's one of the things we are worried about. What if we've lost some physical freedom? Are we going to lose other freedoms?
We are. I feel like there's this fascist force that is grabbing power, and it's through media, and it's affecting the infrastructure of the global infrastructure, but the national, it's affecting that. And it's almost like your soul's being ripped out of you. Now, I don't mean to be dark, but that's what it feels like.
I'm loving it
to me. And it's like, what do we do? Like Geoff and Fernando and John P. Like, I don't know if you've seen my new website, but I want to do everything I can to help dealers, help retailers, as I like to call them, auto retailers, get through this and come out. To me, there's nothing to come out of. To me, it's like, it's like the Big Bang Theory. It just exploded, and it's just going to keep evolving in this direction. I don't see it like there's this end point in time. Terrorism, Think of 9/11. I mean, that period, the post 9/11 period lasted a few months, but I'd say probably within 6 months to a year, things kind of moved on. And it's like, we forget. I don't see it being short term.
I want to jump back in what you said about helping the dealers. I think that the focus, adaptation, innovation, right? Figuring out, understanding how we can grow our business into the future as things change. And I think the dealerships are a flashpoint for understanding those changes, how they need to happen. They've got a lot of work to do as far as making sure that the final transaction wet signature gets brought up a lot. What's going to be, how do you get the wet signature, assuming you still need that, and you currently do in many situations, what adaptation needs to take place to get the wet signature and make the sale? And we focus around that and adapt our businesses towards that last mile delivery, right, John? Last mile delivery is the key topic that puts car shipping on the map right now. And so whether you're a carrier or a broker or a dealer, figuring out that last mile delivery solution, and I think we all focus on that. And then, get the help we need financially. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say it's part of the loophole with a rental. The rental guys have it free and clear in every state. They're considered essential businesses, right? And you don't need any signatures with a rental inside an app, right? It's a much easier transaction to take. So if you can defer that purchase till potentially times get better and get that deferred buyer and get him into a rental with an option to buy and some accrued equity, all of a sudden you solve that because you've got the remote delivery without a wet signature. You've got potentially that deferred buyer to say, yeah, you know what, I still need a vehicle. I'm not going to take, public transportation or ride share, or depend on anything. I do need a vehicle in the driveway, even though I'm not driving too much. But I'm still gaining something. I'm still get that pipeline to execute. But those are real questions. Again, to kind of emphasize the positive. And I could go the negative, because all of this money pumped in the economy does scare me. It's kind of like, well, don't worry, we're just going to pay for everybody to do everything. Well, there's a day of reckoning there too, right? You can't just keep printing money without, nasty things happening. But again, the evolution of that wet signature and how to do a remote sale, it's going to get accelerated really quickly, right? Because it has to. And it might have taken 5 years to get to that level, but it's going to take a matter of months now, just because of the necessity of being able to figure this stuff out, because it has to happen.
And that's the quagmire of title and registration, right? If you want to focus on essential business, let's focus on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Jay, I put your quote in the live chat. What adaptation needs to take place for dealers to get the quote unquote, that wet signature? And yeah, let's use that as kind of the, that focal point. That's what we need to focus on, is what that is, and how we're all contributing to that. Look, we've been up here for almost an hour on here. So I in respect of everybody's time, and probably should wind things down. Geoff, Fernando, any final thoughts or closing comments you'd care to share?
Sure. I would say that, we all know this, but we're fortunate to be working in an industry that's 5 to 7 years ahead of other verticals from a technology standpoint. There's a lot of money. You think about a dealership, it's basically a $50 million a year business on average. So it's a big shop in a small market, right? So those people have money to invest in opportunities, solutions that many of you've kicked around, and things that we're all working on. I know Fernando and I are working with several large national software providers that are in thousands of dealerships that want to extend the small piece that we offer up into it. So they're all thinking through that this is now the new reality. And I think as we all team up and partner, we'll figure this out quickly and dealers who also have a large presence as a political body, state by state, as you know, they can have a great lobbying arm. So any type of, Jay, you talked about the wet signature issue. Their lobbyists are already working on that in those states to use this as momentum to now get them to update that. So I think I'm optimistic about what's going to come out of this for everybody, the consumer, the dealer, and of course us as solution vendors.
Yeah, I'm optimistic too. I think the service side is going to have a lot of pent up demand. I think that dealerships are going to be able to compete, especially on the used car side, with your companies like Carvana and CarMax. This technology is out there already to allow them to do the exact same thing that Carvana does. And now's them saying, hey, I was going to do this in 5 years or slow roll it. Now's the time to just pull the trigger. I have to do it to survive. So I think it's going to be a really exciting time to see dealerships do stuff that they have been talking that they want to do to finally actually do it.
I wonder, can a dealer do what can a brick and mortar do what Carvana is doing and sell a vehicle to a customer and title and tag it from out of state?
Absolutely.
Out of state? Yeah.
So, and that seems to be less of an issue. It sounds to me, I mean, Colorado, Nevada have all come around. Michigan sounds like that's not even
in every
issue.
normal state except Pennsylvania. They've actually shut guys down for violating the spirit of the agreement. So in normal states, yeah, but I'd still be nervous about Pennsylvania.
If you're in
You still have an asterisk with Pennsylvania, that's for sure.
Yeah. Remember, it was Philadelphia where they took that guy off of the without a mask. We're a little different.
True. In Michigan, we're just not allowed to buy flags, seeds, drive our cars up to our other residents. What else? We're a little crazy the other way in Michigan. So.
But can you get guns?
You can buy guns.
That's the bellwether. That's how we know where we stand.
We all own them all already here. So we're in good shape.
Hey, Jim Kalajeric has shared an article in Slack, just so you know, permanent working at home will rock banks and credit unions. And there were two talking points that he pointed out. One was how fewer commuters mean cars last longer. And the other was fewer commuters reduces demand for gas and auto servicing related businesses. I'm going to bring that up next week. Next week, I have Alan Cooper and Graham Line coming on. We're going to get into some kind of more, I don't want to say high tech. It is high tech, but we're going to get into some a technical product that they offer through their company, and as it pertains to car sales. But something that's being reported on right now in mass media is the positive impact that the stay and shelter place has had on the environment, with fewer cars on the road and whatnots. And to me, that's related directly to transportation. So it's something to think about for next week and over the next maybe few weeks is the environmental positives that are coming out of this. And again, going back to the idea of this COVID-19 economy, right? Will people work from home more? Will people drive less? Will people continue to, get groceries delivered online versus at the store? These trends we don't know all feed into the long-term COVID-19. So, talk about a silver lining. If the environment wins out of all this, that is really good. And what can we do as individuals to do our part to keep it that way? So Jim, thanks for sharing that. I know you're up here not on video, but I'll use that as a talking point for next week. All right, gentlemen, good stuff today. Great to see you up here as always. Jay, thank you.
Thank you.
What's your game plan with ATI? You're going live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, just for like 20 minutes?
So I'm cautious about rolling out additional shows, but I now have 3 shows. I have 1 channel, 3 shows. I've had Tuesday nights live for over 2 years, every Tuesday night. But now I'm doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon, state of car hauling address updates. And I'll do that as long as it makes sense. And then twice a month, I'm doing dispatching live on Thursdays at noon. car
Dispatching.
hauling. Yeah. So this is about dispatchers and carriers.
Okay.
And this is all about carriers staying loaded. They look on load boards. They're not going to stop doing that. Even though I talk all the time about going and talking to dealers and brokers and talk to whoever you can that ships cars. But
come work with us.
and you know what? And carriers are never going to stop looking on load boards. I think they're just comfortable with it.
Yep.
And they think that that is, a great idea. And it's a great way to also fill in spots. But anyways, I have 3 shows now.
Okay. And when we met, like, what, a month or 2 ago, you had 1.
And I've had 1 for 2 years.
And you thought I was crazy for having,
well, you have 9.
however many.
Yeah, that's why I'm cautious, because I've had several before, and it's tough to keep up with. And now having 3 shows, and I went live 5 days last week, and that's a lot of work.
It is. It's a lot of prep work to get them together, lining them up, for sure. And making sure you're bringing some sort of value too.
That's right. That's right. Just because you can go live doesn't mean you should.
Well, we've hit a point where, everyone does panels now. Everybody's doing webinars and podcasts, and it's like, okay, like we've just hit this new threshold, but a lot of that will die away because people will realize that it is not easy to just, monetize your time and bring value, week in and week out. It's a lot of work to do that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And there's no need to have an everything show. Next week it's cats, and this week it's mufflers, and some people do that, and that's okay. But you've got to evolve and focus.
The everything show.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, let's call it a wrap. I'm gonna just do some housekeeping stuff. If you want to talk with me afterwards when I go off the air, just hang tight. Otherwise, you know how to reach me. And by the way, I should mention this on all of my properties now, because I have 4. Autoconversion.net. If you go up there, there's a live chat. Like I use Drift live chat. Really effective way to just, if you want to instant chat me. Obviously Slack works too. I'm always got Slack up. So that's the best way to get hold of me as well. And thanks to those that are, contributing ideas in Slack. I really appreciate it. Jim K, you've been really good about contributing ideas in Slack. Thank you. All right, guys, we're done for the day.
Right.
Thanks for participating.
Thank you for having us.
And Geoff and Fernando, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. Take care, Ryan. Thanks, everybody.
See everyone.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you. All right, folks, there you have it. The Mobility Tech and Transportation Mastermind. We do this every Wednesday. It starts at 2:00. It starts, oops, I shared the wrong screen. It starts with an interview. Like I said, next week I have Alan Cooper and Graham Line coming on. We're going to talk about their tracking. I don't even know the word for it. I should probably have that prepared, but it identifies people visiting your park, not your showroom, but actually where your cars are. It can track them and identify them, and you can advertise to them in unique ways. So that'll be next week. Once you're registered for the program here, you are always invited to come back and join us. So there's a link right here to participate in our masterminds. You don't have to have video on, but as you saw, you can. And the benefits of doing so is you're in the video on YouTube, and you're featured in our podcasts, which we do about once or twice a week now. And when I write articles, I'll be able to reference you in articles as well. So a lot of great benefits. Thanks again. I'm Ryan Girardi. Have a great rest of the week, everyone, and great rest of your day. Take care.
See y'all later.
Yeah.